Welcome to today's episode with the sexual chemistry, where we're diving deep into one of humanity's most universal yet rarely discussed experiences. I'm your host, Zoya Sinclair, and today we're going to talk about masturbation, self-pleasure, solo sex, whatever you want to call it. And before you think this is just another awkward health class lecture, stick with me. We're about to explore centuries of shame, groundbreaking science, personal transformations, and practical wisdom that could literally change your life. Here's the thing. While nearly everyone does it, we've spent centuries being told it's shameful, dangerous, or pathological. But what if I told you that modern science reveals the complete opposite? What if self-pleasure isn't just normal, but actually beneficial for your health, relationships, and personal growth? Today, we're going to journey from the bizarre medical advice of the Victorian era to cutting-edge research that's revolutionizing how we understand sexuality. We'll hear real stories of transformation, explore the fascinating difference between sexual attraction and sex drive. And yes, we'll get practical about techniques that actually work. So buckle up, because we're about to challenge everything you thought you knew about one of the most natural human experiences. Oh, and if you're hungry for more thought-provoking content on psychology, intimacy, identity, and human connection, check out Scoob, the AI-powered podcast app, with access to over 1,500 expertly curated episodes based on the best resources worldwide. Download Scoob from the App Store or Play Store today and dive deeper into the topics that matter most: mind, body, and everything in between. Let's start with a trip back in time, specifically to the Victorian era, when self-pleasure was considered so dangerous that medical professionals recommended truly horrifying cures. Meet Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. Yes, the same guy who invented cornflakes. But his breakfast cereals weren't his most disturbing legacy. Dr. Kellogg was absolutely obsessed with stopping masturbation, which he considered a terrible sin that could damn both soul and body. His recommended solutions were nothing short of medieval torture. For young boys, he suggested circumcision without anesthesia, believing the pain would create a corrective psychological impact. He thought the prolonged soreness would deter the behavior, especially if it was associated with punishment. But wait, it gets worse. For parents too squeamish for surgical intervention, Kellogg had an even more draconian method: tightly stretching the foreskin over the head of the penis and securing it with needle and wire to prevent erections. And if those measures failed, he had patented genital cages to physically restrain boys from touching themselves. The medical community of the time backed these extreme measures with equally extreme propaganda. They spread terrifying tales of boys going insane, blind, or developing deformities. They claimed future offspring would be mentally impaired. Kellogg himself wrote in his widely read book, Plain Facts for Old and Young, that victims would literally die by their own hand. Even G. Stanley Hall, considered the father of adolescent psychology and the first president of the American Psychological Association, called masturbation the scourge of the human race. These weren't fringe beliefs, this was mainstream medical advice. The contrast with today couldn't be starker. Modern European perspectives have completely flipped the script. The United Kingdom, once the epitome of Victorian prudishness, now recognizes sexual orgasm as a basic human right. Adolescents are actually encouraged to masturbate as a means of reducing sexually transmitted infections and preventing teenage pregnancies. This dramatic shift reveals something crucial. The shame around self-pleasure isn't based on science or health. It's based on cultural fear and misunderstanding that we're finally beginning to overcome. Now let's talk about what modern research actually reveals about sexual activity and self-pleasure. And prepare to be amazed, because the health benefits are extraordinary. First, let's address something that affects half the population monthly: menstrual pain. A 2013 study published in Cephalalgia surveyed 800 migraine sufferers and 200 cluster headache sufferers. The results were remarkable. 60% of those who engaged in sexual activity during episodes reported improvement in migraine pain, and 37% noticed diminished pain from cluster headaches. Why does this work? Sexual arousal, genital stimulation, and orgasm significantly increase levels of endorphins and corticosteroids, your body's natural painkillers. Instead of reaching for ibuprofen, you might literally have a better solution at your fingertips. But the benefits extend far beyond pain relief. In a study of about 1,900 U.S. women, psychologist Carol Rinkleib Ellison found that 9% had masturbated in the prior 3 months specifically to relieve menstrual cramps. And here's something even more intriguing. A 2002 study in gynecologic and obstetric investigation suggested that sexual activity during menstruation could lower the risk of developing endometriosis, a prevalent and painful condition affecting many women. The health benefits continue across multiple body systems. Healthy sexual activity supports proper estrogen levels, keeping vaginal tissues healthy and protecting against heart disease and osteoporosis. There's even evidence for anti-aging effects. Psychologist David Weeks found that women who have sex 3 times a week look about 10 years younger compared to those who are sexually active only twice a week. Perhaps most remarkably, there's evidence that sexual activity may lower disease risk. A 1989 study in the Journal of Clinical Epidemiology examined 51 childless French women recently diagnosed with breast cancer compared to 95 healthy women. The study concluded that reduced sexual activity, less than once a month, was linked with a higher risk of breast cancer. The cardiovascular benefits are equally impressive. A 2010 study revealed that men who had sex at least twice a week had a 50% reduced risk of cardiovascular disease. While comparable studies on women's sexual habits and heart disease are still needed, a 2016 study found that women diagnosed with coronary heart disease were less likely to remain sexually active. Here's the bottom line. By promoting disease prevention, enhancing hormonal health, and fortifying biological systems, satisfying sexual activity could significantly contribute to a longer lifespan. A longitudinal Duke University study followed 252 men and women over 25 years to identify predictors of longevity. For women, the most crucial factors were good health, physical well-being, and past sexual enjoyment. Not frequency, but enjoyment. Now I want to share a powerful personal story that illustrates how our relationship with sexuality can profoundly impact our lives, relationships, and self-confidence. This is the story of someone who struggled with premature ejaculation, a condition he believes stemmed from poor masturbation habits learned in youth. Like many boys, he learned to masturbate quickly, secretively, under a shroud of taboo and shame. This conditioned him to seek quick gratification, creating a pattern that would plague his adult relationships. His early sexual experiences were fraught with anxiety and frustration. Feeling sexually inadequate, he turned to oral sex as compensation. Since he felt he couldn't satisfy a woman with his penis, he resolved to master satisfaction with his mouth. His initial attempts at cunnilingus were hesitant and tentative, nervous licks here and there. But through trial and error, he came to understand that cunnilingus wasn't mere foreplay. It was what he called core play. This meant treating it as a crucial process with a beginning, middle, and end, guiding a woman through various stages of arousal to climax. Embracing this approach enabled him to give women complete pleasure, which allowed him to let go of his sexual anxieties and start enjoying the experience. This reduced his sexual anxiety, developed his self-control, and made him a more competent and considerate lover. Looking back at the depressive episodes and heartaches he'd endured due to premature ejaculation, he says cunnilingus didn't just revitalize his sex life, it saved his life. He vividly recalls the life-changing moment when he first brought a woman to orgasm using his tongue. It was like E.B. White's memory of receiving his first payment for writing. That feeling of, this was it, I was a pro at last, the same sense of accomplishment washed over him. Years later, happily married and capable of fulfilling sexual activities, he remains an advocate for cunnilingus, believing it's the most intimate, respectful, and rewarding sexual act a man can perform. As writer Sally Tisdale put it, to submit to another's belly or another's mouth. Oral sex may be the most potent of sexual acts. It is an act of power derived from the most vulnerable kind of intimacy. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. During therapy with his wife Stella, they worked on patterns that had developed in their relationship. The breakthrough came not through technique, but through emotional courage. After an argument left Stella disheartened, James wanted to comfort her, but hesitated, fearing rejection. Despite her evident anger, he overcame his discomfort and held her anyway. Previously, he would have withdrawn, carefully gauging her readiness. But this time, he made an independent decision, expressing his own emotions. This shift from reactive to proactive aroused him. As he gently massaged her back, she began to relax, realizing he was present and capable of handling her emotional intensity. This led to what they both described as an exquisite, intimate encounter. not just physical release, but a celebration of quiet passion and profound reconnection. The key insight? During this encounter and subsequent ones, James experienced no premature ejaculation or fear of it. When sexual activity feels obligatory, quick ejaculation becomes a way to end discomfort. But when partners engage freely, treating surrender as self-assertion, there's no rush to conclude. The focus shifts from hurried completion to enjoying mutual trust and intimacy. James realized that premature ejaculation is a misleading term. It's less about timing and more about lacking deliberate intent. A better term might be involuntary ejaculation. Once he assumed control over his desires, he gained mastery over his ejaculation. It takes two people to establish a pattern, but just one to change it. Taking control paradoxically allowed James to lose control, liberating him from sexual constraints. For the first time in years, he began fantasizing about his wife again, imagining future intimacies and places they might explore together. For too long, sexual education has focused on anatomy and reproduction, while ignoring pleasure and technique. Fortunately, that's changing thanks to pioneers who've dedicated themselves to real sexual education. Enter omgs.com, a groundbreaking website founded by women who collaborated with researchers from Indiana University. Their mission was revolutionary: actually study how women masturbate. Through interviews with over 2,000 women, they identified 12 prevalent masturbation methods, all emphasizing external stimulation and clitoral focus. They didn't just collect data, they created educational content. The site features videos of women discussing and demonstrating clitoral-focused techniques with close-up visuals. Their Season 1 includes 50 videos covering the 12 identified techniques, plus 11 interactive touchscreen videos that let users practice on a virtual vulva while receiving feedback. It's like having a personal instructor for pleasure. This represents a dramatic shift from previous educational approaches. Historically, one of the few educational resources was Celebrating Orgasm Carol by Betty Dodson, featuring Betty guiding a woman named Carol in appreciating her vulva and achieving orgasm. Female students often found this video either normalized their practices or introduced new techniques, though some expressed sadness at not receiving such education earlier. When viewing educational sexual content, arousal is a normal reaction that instructors need to address. Research shows that arousal in women isn't necessarily linked to sexual orientation. Both lesbian and heterosexual women can experience arousal from various visual content. Women are generally visually responsive, so arousal when watching educational content should be expected and normalized. Betty Dodson has been conducting group and private masturbation lessons since the 1960s, representing a long-standing commitment to sexual empowerment. Her work demonstrates that education about pleasure isn't frivolous, it's essential for sexual health and confidence. What's particularly valuable about these educational resources is their anatomical grounding. When watching technique videos, you can observe where women touch themselves and connect that with anatomical knowledge. Many women in OMGES videos stimulate their clitoral hood, while others use techniques engaging inner lips, clitoral bulbs, and clitoral legs simultaneously. The combination of education and practice represented by these resources highlights something crucial. Sexual pleasure is a skill that can be learned and improved. Just as we wouldn't expect someone to excel at piano without instruction, sexual satisfaction often benefits from education and practice. One of the most important distinctions in understanding sexuality is the difference between sexual attraction and sex drive. Terms often used interchangeably but representing fundamentally different experiences. Sex drive, or libido, is the innate desire for sexual release, marked by physical sensations and sometimes intrusive thoughts. It can appear spontaneously and isn't necessarily directed at anyone. This internal experience is independent of sexual orientation. A woman can identify as gay yet have a high sex drive, meaning she frequently seeks sexual release. Conversely, a straight man might have a low sex drive. Sexual attraction differs in that it's directed at or caused by a particular individual. It involves wanting to engage sexually with that specific person, essentially giving libido a target. Think of the difference between physiological hunger, sex drive, and craving a specific dish, sexual attraction. This distinction is crucial for understanding asexual experiences. Asexual individuals might lack desire for sexual release or possess an undirected sex drive, experiencing generic horniness without attraction to others. But having undirected sex drive isn't exclusive to asexual people. A gay man in an environment full of women might still feel sexual urges despite not being attracted to those around him. It's also important to distinguish between sexual attraction or drive and physical arousal. People can experience unsolicited erections or arousal during medical exams without any libido or attraction. Research by psychologist Lori Brotto shows that both asexual and non-asexual women exhibit similar levels of genital arousal when exposed to sexual imagery. Consider Sarah, who experiences sexual release desires without these being triggered by other people, nor does she find involving others appealing. The bodily sensations of libido don't translate into desire for others. Similarly, Vesper, an asexual blogger, noticed increased sex drive after starting testosterone but no change in sexual attraction. Despite newfound awareness of libido, it remained undirected toward any specific person. This leads to what David J. calls the masturbation paradox among asexual people who masturbate. He argues they engage in perhaps the purest form of sexual desire, sexual arousal and release without the social and emotional complexities of partnered sex. It's arguably more purely sexual than acts involving another person, devoid of dynamics like flirtation or intimate gestures. Understanding these distinctions helps normalize different sexual experiences. Whether someone has high or low sex drive, experiences sexual attraction or not, or prefers solo or partnered activities, all represent valid ways of being human. Now let's get practical. Whether you're exploring self-pleasure for the first time or looking to expand your repertoire, here's evidence-based guidance on techniques that actually work. For those interested in combining clitoral stimulation with vaginal penetration, start by inserting a finger after you're highly aroused. Some find it satisfying to keep a finger inserted throughout, while others prefer insertion just before climax, which can sometimes trigger orgasm. Always use lubricant for comfort and enhanced pleasure. Sex toys can provide varied sensations beyond fingers. Lying on your stomach and rubbing against a soft object like a pillow can be intensely pleasurable. Remember, the goal is pure enjoyment without worrying about how these techniques might translate to partner activities. Water can offer unique stimulation. Try lying in a bathtub with genitals positioned under a faucet stream, or use a handheld shower head. Waterproof vibrators can add even more variety to these experiences. For many women, vibrators make a significant difference in achieving orgasms. Numerous women experience their first orgasm only after using a vibrator. Even if you're successful with manual stimulation, vibrators can add new dimensions to your sex life. One sex toy website states, "If you have never tried a vibrator before, you are in for an amazing experience." Interestingly, recent research found that vibrations applied to rabbits' clitorises increase the number of clitoral nerve endings. Given the similar anatomy between rabbits and humans, scientists speculate this could have implications for women too. This extends the saying, "fucking like rabbits," to perhaps vibrating like bunnies. If you're new to vibrators, start with one designed for clitoral stimulation, offering various speeds to experiment with intensity. The selection can be overwhelming, so consider browsing specialized retailers like Babland or a Woman's Touch Sexuality Resource Center. These sites offer chat services, helplines, and special sections for first-time buyers, with options starting around $12. Remember that technique often involves more than just physical stimulation. The mental component is equally important. Creating a relaxed environment, focusing on pleasure rather than performance, and exploring what feels good to you personally are all crucial elements. The key insight across all techniques is personalization. What works for one person may not work for another, and what works for you might change over time. The goal isn't to master specific techniques, but to develop comfort with your own body and pleasure. As we near the end of our journey today, I want to emphasize that the benefits of self-pleasure extend far beyond physical technique or even health benefits. They touch on fundamental aspects of human experience, self-knowledge, confidence, and personal empowerment. When we look at James's story, we see how developing comfort with his own sexuality ultimately transformed not just his sex life, but his entire approach to relationships. By learning to take control of his desires and communicate his needs, he became more confident in all areas of life. This wasn't just about solving premature ejaculation, it was about reclaiming agency over his own experience. The educational resources we discussed represent more than just technique guides. They're tools for developing sexual literacy, understanding your own body, preferences, and responses. This self-knowledge creates a foundation for healthier relationships, better communication, and more satisfying experiences, whether solo or partnered. The historical perspective reminds us how far we've come from the shame and misinformation of the past. The transition from viewing masturbation as a dangerous pathology to recognizing it as a basic human right represents a fundamental shift in how we understand human sexuality. The research on health benefits reveals that sexual satisfaction isn't just about pleasure, it's about overall wellness. From pain relief to cardiovascular health, from hormone regulation to disease prevention, sexual activity contributes to a healthier, longer life. Perhaps most importantly, understanding the difference between sexual attraction and sex drive helps normalize the full spectrum of human sexual experience. Whether you're highly sexual or asexual, partnered or solo, your experience is valid and worthy of respect. As we wrap up today's deep dive into the science and practice of self-pleasure, I hope you're walking away with a fundamentally different perspective than when we started. We've journeyed from the horrifying medical advice of the Victorian-era to cutting-edge research revealing extraordinary health benefits. We've heard personal stories of transformation and discovered educational resources that make sexual literacy accessible to everyone. We've explored the crucial distinctions between different aspects of sexuality and learned practical techniques grounded in real research. But perhaps most importantly, we've challenged the shame and misinformation that have surrounded this natural human experience for far too long. The science is clear. Self-pleasure isn't just normal, it's beneficial for your health, your relationships, and your personal development. Whether you're someone who's never felt comfortable with sexuality, someone struggling with sexual issues, or someone simply curious about the latest research, remember this: your relationship with your own sexuality is your own to define. There's no right or wrong way to experience pleasure, no timeline you need to follow, and no shame in seeking the education and resources you need. The shift from shame to science represents one of the most positive developments in human health and wellness. By embracing evidence-based understanding of sexuality, we're not just improving our own lives, we're contributing to a culture that values health, pleasure, and human dignity. So whether you're just beginning to explore these ideas or you're ready to dive deeper into the resources we've discussed, remember that this journey is yours to take at your own pace. The science supports you, the resources are available, and most importantly, you deserve a healthy, satisfying relationship with your own sexuality. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. If today's episode with the sexual chemistry gave you new insights or sparked curiosity, please like, follow, and share this podcast with someone who might benefit. Your support spreads knowledge and creates a more open, empowered community. And if you're eager for more research-based tools on intimacy, relationships, or self-discovery, check out Scoob, the AI-powered podcast app, with over 1,500 curated episodes inspired by best-selling nonfiction books and expert perspectives on sex, love, and personal growth. Download Scoob from the App Store or Play Store and make your journey to self-love and sexual well-being even richer. Until next time, remember, self-love isn't selfish, it's essential.